Turning Red is a decent film having really cute red panda, genuinely hilarious jokes, and some touching self-actualization moments. Yet as a Chinese I still feel cringe and uncomfortable to watch this movie, since at the bottom of it, Turning Red is a typical Hollywood formulated product, employing cliché stereotype and commodifying cultural elements and traditions, despite being mostly accurate to the source culture, which is doing much better than many previous Western movies on Chinese culture already. Bear in mind that I'm not a Chinese American or Canadian, so my thought might be quite different from Chinese communities in Western countries, which is the target audience of this movie. First off, Turning Red is basically a story of defying the tiger mom or helicopter mom, which is a newer stereotype of modern Chinese society, as well as in overseas Chinese communities around the world. We have seen this kind of story a million times, and Turning Red has offers nothing new. The portrayal of the controlling parenting style in this movie is also way too exaggerated and cartoonish that are written for dramatic effect. Even we may have experienced similar embarrassing situation. A controlling parent may get concerned and outraged for their kids fantasizing sexual drawing, but I doubt that they would go confront that boy with these drawings in front of a bunch of people. A mother may panic when her daughter has her first period and may snoop around the school gate to try to give her something, but a normal person wouldn't give her the pads without covered in front of the whole class and saying it out loud, especially when the mother is quite ashamed to talk about periods already. It's hard to believe that any sane person in any culture would purposefully do something like this. Even someone like that exists, it's not a common trait found in daily life that can represent Chinese parents' behavior. Surely tiger mom exists, but parent-child relationship is way more complicated and terrifying than just some embarrassing moment. It's vital to explore these delicate relationships in depth if you want to employ a stereotype for a story and discuss the culture within. Otherwise, you are just reinforcing stereotype without offering anything new and productive.
I'm never gonna be good enough for her.
I will never be good enough for you.
The second issue is the overuse of cultural elements. Like most Western movies, Turning Red makes use of so-called traditional cultural elements to construct a story, which is weird to watch as someone from that culture. Filial piety, temple, ancestor worship, Chinese people good at maths, Taoism, panda, changshan, hanfu, Chinese dumplings, buns. Turning Red pretty much stack as much Chinese cultural elements as possible, though some of them are accurate. It's kind of annoying to see films screaming, "This is a Chinese cultural film" all the time. Imagine you're an Italian, you're watching an Italian film made by foreigners, and the film has to keep showing cultural elements like characters constantly eating pizza and pasta, a wearing Venice carnival mask, plot involving opera singing, Roman gods, and Catholic priests performed exorcism. That's kind of how I feel while watching foreign films about Chinese culture that always emphasize the Chineseness. Like you're only Chinese when you live this essential cultural life. This can work if it's a fantasy setting like Avatar: The Last Airbender, where cultural elements are employed to construct a completely standalone fantasy world. But the movie is very much based in real-life setting and aims to represent Chinese immigrants in Canada. This kind of cultural elements movies become somewhat annoying. Despite the cultural elements are mostly accurate to traditional Chinese culture, they are very much detached from modern-day Chinese life. In fact, modern-day China has gone through many westernized movements in the 20th century that many traditional customs no longer have a role in our daily life. Rarely anyone will wear changsam or hanfu in daily life anymore, even in my mother or grandmother's generation. Chinese people may worship ancestors at home, but people don't go to temple on a daily basis, let alone see a real Taoist priest in reality. In Hong Kong movies, Taoist priests performing rituals are usually used as a comedic element. I don't know if this ancestral temple exists or not in Canada Chinatown, but ancestral temples are quite rare in modern China, and only respectable rich family with long documented history would own it. The idea of an ordinary middle-class family having such a temple is a perfected imagination of Chinese culture. From what I can observe, the Lee family are mostly possibly Cantonese from Hong Kong. The spell in the ritual is Cantonese. The family is watching TVB, a Hong Kong mainstream television channel. The surname Lee is a romanization of Cantonese. In Mandarin romanization, it will be Li rather than Li. The ancestor name Sun Yi is also a Hong Kong Cantonese romanization. These details are well done and much more accurate than most Western movies. But if they are a Cantonese family, some of their customs still come off as a general homogeneous Chinese stereotype. Cantonese people eat dim sum in tea house but not at home, unless your mom is a tea house cook, I guess. Wrapping and eating dumplings at home is more of a northern Chinese custom, but not a very Cantonese trait. A more common representative Cantonese cuisine would be double boil soup, which is a cooking technique that boils all sorts of herbs or meat within a jar for hours.
I'm Meilin Lee.
If Mei is Hong Kong Cantonese, her name wouldn't be Meilin Lee, but Li Meilin, which is the Hong Kong way of romanization, placing the family name first and given name behind, and separate each Chinese character with a gap, rather than linking them together. Chinese immigrants from Hong Kong would also be quite different from immigrants from mainland China or Taiwan. The last matter is the hollowness of ideology. Turning red doesn't make up its mind on the metaphor of red panda, which also relates to the inconsistency of the story message. In the first half of the story, it's about a teenage girl learning to control her emotion through the bonding of friendship, but then the second half shifts the focus of the story to breaking the generational trauma and the importance of family love and tradition. This inconsistency of red panda metaphor also reflects this change of message. At first, red panda is a symbol for puberty, later represents sexual desire and emotion in general. The Lee family repress their feelings by suppressing their pandas, while Mei controls her panda through love to her friends. When Mei's mother gets angry and attacks everyone, her family saves her by transforming into red pandas, so we can interpret red panda as a metaphor for family love as well. Nevertheless, the issue between Mei and her mother isn't the lack of love or repression of love, but the toxicity she expresses with her fierce love. So embracing family love, i.e. the red panda, wouldn't solve the problem of toxic parenting style. Also in the end of the film, when Mei chooses to embrace her panda and follow her ancestor Sun Yi in the bamboo forest, red panda seems to represent traditional value as well. The traditional value in this context is also family love, since Sun Yi gained her power to protect her family in the first place. All these metaphors are ambiguous, contradictory to one another, and messy. Like the writer just borrowed the red panda conveniently to symbolize all concepts that come along with the plot. Why did the Lee family suppress their ancestral blessing when they clearly emphasize the value of family love, which is what that blessing is about? If red panda is a symbol for heritage, then isn't it defying heritage when the Lee family tries to get rid of it? The logic is simply flawed, and after embracing the panda, Mei and her friends and her mom just commodify it, without actually doing some good with superpowers, besides raising money. The message of turning red is to embrace your heritage and then commodify a culture? I'm confused. But Disney and Pixar are definitely commodifying this movie. The movie just speaks for itself, and it works. I wanna own a red panda, it's so cute. It all boils down to the surface level exploration of ideology and traditional values. Disney and Pixar just simply pick up a Chinese mascot and relate it to a bunch of random cliché ideology, without truly processing the meaning behind. Turning red seemingly has a meaningful message, but there are too many inconsistent messages. The logic behind family love and tradition is flawed, and the ideology is essentially empty. Despite the cultural flaws of this movie, I know a lot of people still personally relate to the coming-of-age film of Turning Red, and Asian communities may already be quite satisfied with the attempt of diversity and the more accurate portrayal of Chinese culture. Please tell me what you think of this movie in the comment down below, and I will see you until next time.